Welcome, everyone. Simon Rosenberg, Hopium Chronicles, back with another great event. Today, joining us is one of the real heroes of our fight for democracy these last few months, Congressman Robert Garcia. Welcome, Congressman.
Yeah, happy to be here.
So listen, I wondered if you could, this has been a momentous week. I mean, Donald Trump just lost a vote in the House 427-1. He doesn't like to lose, as you know, and this was a big one where Congress had to step in to force him to release these files that he has been suppressing and keeping hid. Can you take us back to the summer a little bit about how this all began, just to remind everybody about how this all started over the summer and where you think we are today now in this fight for the Epstein files?
Sure thing. So back in July, I had just become the ranking member during the summer. And during that transition process, it became really evident that the Epstein investigation was being stalled. There was clearly an attempt by the DOJ to kind of say that there really was no investigation or nothing else to report out. They kind of had this kind of weird influencer event, as you remember, many months ago. And so the president had basically flip-flopped on his campaign promise. Yet the Oversight Committee was clearly getting information from multiple sources, from survivors, concern there was in the community about the investigation. So we devised essentially an idea to try to force Republicans to vote on a subpoena for all of the Epstein files. And we picked a subcommittee where we knew there were folks like Nancy Mace, others that had publicly been pretty active about trying to get the files released. And the subpoena vote, we kind of sprung it on folks. It happened in the subcommittee and it passed. That then started a series of events that kind of got us here today. By passing that vote, we were able to also put in place a series of depositions that Republicans asked for to add to our motion, which we agreed to. We then subpoenaed the Epstein estate, and we moved forward. Soon after that, Ro Khanna, who of course is on our committee, to strengthen that process, he also put forward a petition with Tom Massey, who was very interested, and to file that on the House floor. So there were basically two parallel efforts happening. The subpoena effort then, of course, begins getting documents. So we got documents from the DOJ, very limited amount. They essentially stonewalled the rest. But then we began getting a ton of documents from the Epstein estate. So we got the birthday book note that Donald Trump said didn't exist. We got all these documents about flight logs and who was on some of these flights with Epstein. And then, of course, just a week ago, we got this huge batch of documents from the estate talking about really the relationship between Donald Trump and Epstein and many others. And then, of course, all of this has been building to this vote where we finally got enough signatures to force a vote, where we got an unanimous, essentially, vote of the House. Senate sails it through, and the president, of course, has had a flip-flop and vote for it. So today we're at a position where we have two things. We have a piece of legislation that's been signed by the president, and we have an active subpoena to the DOJ and the Epstein estate that are now forcing release of these documents. And so that's where we are. We are demanding, as always, at Bondi, get us these documents. They've gotten us very little, but we're going to get justice for the survivors, and that's our promise to the American public.
So when you got these emails from the estate that were things that were not turned over by the Department of Justice, is it your understanding that DOJ had these and just didn't turn them over? Is there clarity about that?
There isn't, because we don't know what the DOJ has. We believe that many of the emails that the Epstein estate has, the DOJ also has. But what the DOJ has is an enormous amount of documents, photos, possibly videos, that the Epstein estate does not have. The Epstein estate is very limited in what it actually has. What the DOJ has is immense. They have financial records, they have bank statements, they have many photographs. They have, we understand, very detailed accounts of what Jeffrey Epstein was doing in his crimes and the co-conspirators involved in these crimes. So the White House is involved in a cover-up. That's exactly what this is. The president's directing a cover-up, we believe. The Attorney General is following along. Mike Johnson has been complicit and not calling for a full release. And so we will continue to get the information that we need from whatever source is out there and whoever wants to speak with us while we await the DOJ to act. But them not acting isn't going to stop us from getting more files and getting more information out to the public.
And I think it's really important to put an exclamation point on what you just said about how this open subpoena from the summer is a subpoena for everything, right? It's not, there's some restrictions on what the discharge petition and the new law gives them an out to sort of hold stuff back, but your subpoena doesn't, right? Is that there's a difference?
That's right. And that's why these two, both the legislation and the subpoena together, are really powerful. Because Bondi might say, well, the law you just passed actually has a phrase in it that speaks to if there's an active investigation, the DOJ may be able to withhold evidence. That's in the law, and it's something that's pretty standard. Our subpoena doesn't have that, because congressional subpoenas often receive pretty classified or confidential information that goes to congressional committees for review. It's very common. And so that is something that the DOJ cannot ignore. They may be able to say, well, we're not going to provide this information to the full Congress and the public, but they can't say the same to the congressional committee.
Yeah, I think this has been a little bit lost in the last few days. This is a really important point. And I think as you've mentioned, this is an active cover-up. The Department of Justice is holding, and FBI are holding things back from the committee. The subpoena was issued in the summer. It's now November. Is there any other additional pressure that you can bring? I mean, what are your thoughts about how you're going to go forward in this investigation? And I should mention that today, Senator Wyden, for example, released a series of documents that are coming, because he's now putting pressure on Treasury, because another place where there are records and files that are germane and relevant to this investigation are sitting in the Treasury Department, which are also being suppressed by the administration.
That's exactly right. And we are working every angle possible. I am personally meeting with survivors, just spoke with one a couple of days ago. We have folks that we are speaking with, patriots that help put the files together. The DOJ and Bondi may think that they can somehow hide the truth, or that, people oftentimes worry, well, they're destroying the files. I will say this, that there are many patriotic civil servants and agents and folks that have worked, hundreds that have worked to put the documents of the DOJ together. And I don't see a scenario where at some point the full truth isn't going to come out.
It's important that everybody hear that, because I think that there's been a lot of chatter in the family that despite us having one of the most extraordinary wins that we've ever had against Donald Trump in the last few days, that somehow he's going to use his magical powers to make this all go away. And certainly he's been ineffective at doing that in the last few months. And I think it's going to be very difficult, as you pointed out, to wish away 1,000 FBI agents and all the other folks that have been involved in this over the last few months.
It's not possible. I know that there are many folks that have worked on this case that are already becoming very concerned. And I think that the Attorney General is very aware that she is not the only one that has reviewed the files. And so I think that everyone is just being very thoughtful and careful and focused on protecting the survivors. And that's been critical and central to what we're trying to do. But I've told people we're a very scrappy and aggressive committee. My team and the staff are phenomenal. They love this country. They are patriotic Americans who want and believe in good government. And we're working really hard to ensure that we do this in a way that's about transparency. And I've said this before, we don't care, our members and team, we don't care who's implicated in the files. I don't care if they're Democrats, Republicans, how powerful they are, how much wealth they have, if they were in government. Who cares? What we want is truth, and we want the survivors to be able to have some type of closure, at least on knowing what's in these files. And so that's incredibly important, and we're not going to stop till we get the truth.
Can I ask one last thing before we go? There was Epstein talked about in the emails about his relationship with the Kremlin and sort of volunteered that he was going to help the Kremlin manage Trump. And I mean, I'm using my own words here, sort of, which was a bit of an ominous thing because we know that he had Russian bank accounts and that there's always been questions about whether or not he was working cooperatively with foreign intelligence services to use this blackmail for illicit reasons. It seems like that his admission that he had a relationship with the Kremlin, he even mentioned names of people that he was working with, itself should spawn some separate investigation beyond just the release of the files. I mean, this seems like a very dark and ominous admission by him in this email.
Yeah, what I can say is that we are actively looking at the links between other foreign governments and the immense amount of money that has been moved in and out of this sex trafficking ring, which quite frankly was much larger than just about the sale of children and women, which is horrific. And so we're very aware of that piece of the investigation, and they're obviously actively looking at it.
It was remarkable that the Secretary of Commerce, who seemed to be on television every day as the primary defender of Donald Trump's economic strategy, in an interview when he mentioned that we all know that Epstein used this as compromise and blackmailed people, that since he made that comment, he's essentially disappeared and not been back on TV in the last few months, he was sort of giving away the store here a little bit.
That's exact. I mean, look, I think the progress we've made on the truth and really bringing a lot more details to this investigation, the public knowledge of it has been, I think, pretty stunning. I mean, everything from Alex Acosta to Lutnick to what's happened to the former prince and the real consequences to even what's happening with Larry Summers right now. We are starting to see consequences. And I think that's really important.
Listen, Congressman, thank you so much, or I should say Ranking Member Garcia, thank you so much. I mean, and you reminded everybody that you just took over this job a few months ago. And I just want to say, look, I've been in Washington a long time, and your courage, your patriotism, your effectiveness, both as a leader and as a communicator, has been really inspiring. And it's just thank you for stepping up this critical time for our country.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you, Congressman. Thanks, everybody. Listen, please share this interview with everybody you know, because he touched on things that are very top of mind for our communities all across the country. We had an extraordinary week, everyone. We have had a series of wins in this fight for our democracy in our country. This was one of the most important that we've had. It's obviously we're just at the beginning of this and not at the middle or the end. Keep fighting, everybody. And please do your best to share this video and also just, send a note of thanks to Congressman Garcia and his office. They have been extraordinary, and we should all be very grateful for what they've done for all of us.